I read a certain amount of the Quran every day, and during my menses, of course, I interrupt that. Can I continue reading the Quran, especially during the month of Ramadan, while having the menses and so on? This is something which, of course, we have been discussing over and over, which is whether it's permissible or not for a woman during her menses to read and touch the Quran. As far as touching the Quran, we said that no one should touch the Quran but in a state of purity, particularly the major impurity, unless if they touch it through a barrier, such as wearing gloves or carrying the Quran in a box or something like that. As far as the hukm, the ruling pertaining to reading the Quran for women during the menses, there is a khilaf, there is a difference of opinion. The khilaf erupted due to relying on a hadith. After investigating the hadith, we found out that the hadith is a hadith da'if, very weak hadith, collected by Abu Dawood, and it is narrated by Abdullah ibn Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him and his father, in which he narrated that the Prophet ﷺ said, لا تقرأوا الحائض ولا الجنب شيئا من القرآن. So he combined between two cases or two conditions. Al-Junub is a person in a state of major impurity, whether it's he or she, such as after experiencing wet dreams due to having sexual discharge or sexual intimate relationship with a complete contact, even without sexual discharge. So these things would require the person to perform ghusl to lift the major impurity. So that was combined, the janaba, with the janaba of the menses in the same hadith. So number one, the hadith is da'if. So we cannot build up a hukm or a ruling on a weak hadith. Number two, they use this analogy, which since al-junub, as we discussed a minute ago, cannot touch nor read the Quran, then by analogy, women during their menses, they're in a state of janaba too. They cannot touch or read the Quran. There is another hadith that the Prophet ﷺ, nothing would stop him or ban him from reading the Quran, but of course the janaba. But this is a qiyas ma'al fariq. There is a big difference. We cannot really apply the analogy here. Why? Because in the case of the janaba, you have in an intimate relationship or experiencing with dreams, it can simply be overcome by taking a bath, performing ghusl. In a few minutes, you're ready to read the Quran, because anyway, you have to pray the next prayer. So you have to remove the major impurity, either with ghusl, with water, or tayammum, in case that the water is not available, or available but not possible to be used for ghusl. But in the case of the menses, we all know that the menses vary, maybe from 4 days, 7 days, 10 days, 15 days in some cases. As you all have seen and heard, many sisters have called and presented their cases where the menses is prolonged for that many number of days. So if a woman is memorized the Quran, or she is either a teacher, a Quranic teacher, religious studies teacher, Islamic studies teacher, or she is a student, she's required to memorize, she's required to revise, she's required to teach. So they said there is no qiyas in this condition. It is definitely permissible for her to read the Quran. But as far as touching the Quran, it has to be through a barrier, such as wearing gloves, or make sure that you flip the pages, as I normally say, with an eraser of a pencil or something like that, so you do not touch the Quran with bare hands. That doesn't apply to the digital devices, iPad, iPhone, tablet, whatever, because this is not a Quran. So I stated there are two different opinions, and if you are a person who is constantly memorizing or revising, then there is no problem for you to read the Quran even while during your menses. Assalamu alaikum.